敬的各位同事、
distinguished colleagues,
女士们、先生们、朋友们，
ladies and
上午
gentlemen,
好。
dear friends, good morning.
现在 我宣布，
I now
新兴市场国家
declare
与发展中国家对话会
opening
开始。
of the dialogue of emerging market and developing countries.
热烈欢迎大家出席
I warmly welcome you all
新兴市场国家
to
与
this
发展中
dialogue
国
of
家对
emerging
话会。
market and developing countries.
金砖国家在领导人会晤
When we
期间，
BRICS leaders meet,
注重同其
we
他
attach
新兴市场
importance
国家和
to
发展中国
communication
家
with
进
other
行
emerging
沟
market
通交
and
流。
developing countries.
中方今年有所创
Well, this
新，
year, the Chinese side has made some
邀请了
innovation by
来自
inviting
不同地区有代表
countries
性的国
with
家
representation
出席
from
今
different
天的会晤
regions
对话会。
to the dialogue.
相信这种对
I'm
话有
confident
利于
that the
新兴
dialogue
市场
will
国家
strengthen
和发展中国家
solidarity
加强团结
and
合作
cooperation
有
among
利
the
于
emerging market and developing
金砖
countries
自身
and also contribute
金砖机制的自身发
to
展。
the building of the BRICS mechanism.
今天大家能够聚到一起啊，非常难
It is
得。
indeed not easy for us to get together for this
很多
dialogue
同
today.
事
I know that
是
many of
远道而来，
my colleagues have traveled a long
有
distance,
的还专门为出席
and some of you have
对话会调整了
rescheduled your
日
program
程安排。
to attend the dialogue.
我们对此表示感谢。
I'd like to extend heartfelt thanks to all of you.
我期待同大家围绕深化互利
Under
合
the theme
作、
of strengthening mutually beneficial
促进共同发展
cooperation
的主题
for common development,
共商发
I
展合作大
look
计，
forward
为深化南南
to
合作，
discussing
落实
the important issue
2030
of development
可持续发展
cooperation
议程，注
with
入
you
强劲
in
动
order
力。
to inject strong impetus to deepening
根据
South-South
今天的
cooperation
会议安
and
排，
implementing the 2030 Sustainable
我将代表中方
2030 Agenda for Sustainable
首先发言。
Development according to the program
之后
of the dialogue.
我
I will
将
make a
请
statement
各位领
on
导人
behalf of the Chinese side
依次
first.
发言，
Then I will invite the leaders
最
to
后
give their statement.
我做一个
And at the
简
end of the
短的
dialogue, I will
总结
give a brief summary of our discussion.
如果大家对会议议程
If there's no
没有意见，
objection to the agenda,
我将首先做一个发
I
言。
will make a statement first.
各位同事，
Dear colleagues,
进入新世纪以来，
since we
新
entered
兴
the
市场国家
21st
和发
century,
展中国家群体
the
崛起，
collective rise of emerging market
成为
and
不可
developing
逆转
countries
的
has
时
become
代潮流。
an irreversible trend of our
近
times.
几年，
In recent years,
这些国家对世界经济增长的
these
贡献率
countries
稳居
have
高位。
made more contribution to global economic growth than
2016
others,
年达到80%，
accounting for 80% of global growth in
是当之
2016.
无愧的主引擎。
They are worthy of the reputation as the primary engine of the world
近期
economy.
世界经济呈现向好
As the
态势，
latest developments
国
suggest,
际贸易
the
和投
global
资
economy
回升，
is looking up, and international
新一
trade and
轮科技和
investment
工业
are
革命
picking up.
蓄势
A
待
new
发
round of technological and industrial
新产业、
revolution
新技
is
术、
gathering momentum.
新业态
New industries, new
层出不穷。
technologies, and new business models are emerging.
从这个意义上
In
讲，
this context,
新兴市场国家和发展中
emerging
国家
market
面
and
临难得
developing
的
countries
发展
face
机
a
遇。
rare opportunity of development.
同时，我们也要看到，
That said,
世界
we
经
should
济
not
下
lose
行风
sight
险和不
of
确
the
定
growing
性，
risks of
在
downward
同步上
pressure
升。
and uncertainties in the world
多
economy.
边贸易谈判举步维艰，
Multilateral trade negotiations are
巴
stalled,
黎协定落
and
实
the implementation
阻力。
of the Paris Agreement on climate change is
部分国
encountering
家内部倾向
resistance.
加重，
Some countries have become more
参与国际
inward-looking
发展合作意
and
愿
less
减退，
inclined to engage in
其
international
政策
development
调整的外
cooperation,
溢效应
and the spillovers
仍在发
of
酵。
their policy adjustment are deepening. As the world economy enters a crucial stage where new drivers of growth are replacing traditional ones at a quicker pace, there is mounting competition focused on interests and rules. This makes the external environment for emerging market and developing countries more complex and challenging. A boat sailing against the currents has to forge ahead or risks falling behind. Given the new circumstances, emerging market and developing countries need to pull together and work hand in hand more confidently to foster a favorable environment for greater development and make bigger contribution to global growth. First, we need to work more closely to build an open world economy. In an increasingly interdependent and integrated world where countries form a community of shared interests, openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation are the only viable option. The beggar-thy-neighbor practice, or zero-sum game, will not help world economic growth, but will undermine, first and foremost, the interests of emerging market and developing countries. We need to advocate a noble world economy, firmly support the multilateral trading regime, oppose protectionism, and rebalance economic globalization to make it more inclusive and equitable. We need to strengthen coordination on positions, work toward a positive outcome at the upcoming 11th WTO Ministerial Conference, make progress on the remaining items of the Doha Development Round, and provide direction to the multilateral trading regime. We need to promote greater representation and a voice of emerging market and developing countries in global economic governance, and foster an international economic order that is fairer and more equitable. Second, we need to work more closely to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Development remains the top priority for emerging market and developing countries. We need to implement our national development strategies in the context of the Sustainable Development Agenda and in light of our respective national conditions. This will help us find a path of sustainable development featuring coordinated economic, social, and ecological progress. We need to call on the international community to place development high on the agenda of macro policy coordination, better leverage the role of the United Nations, make good use of the high-level political forum on sustainable development, and accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda. We need to urge developed countries to honor their commitments, to observe such principles as common but differentiated responsibilities, and to increase support to developing countries. As the United Nations is considering reform of its development system, we need to ensure that the reform will focus on development and bring more input to truly serve the need of developing countries. Third, we need to work more closely to seize the historic opportunities of world economic restructuring. A new round of technological and industrial revolution has generated new growth drivers and brought to us development opportunities like never before. Seizing the opportunities, emerging market and developing countries may even get ahead in development. If the opportunities are missed, the North-South gap and the development imbalance will grow even wider. We must take bold steps of innovation and reform, press ahead with economic structural adjustment, and invigorate domestic drivers for growth. At the same time, we must formulate our social policy in a way that meets people's basic needs and work all out to ensure a better life for our people. We need to enhance complementarity of our development strategies, particularly in such areas as infrastructure development, science and technology, education, and industry.
4. 加强团结协作，共同建设广泛。
Fourth, we need to work more closely to build extensive partnerships.
一花不是春，
As the Chinese saying goes, a single flower does not herald spring. A single wild goose cannot make a formation. Emerging market and developing countries face similar development tasks. By deepening practical cooperation and tapping into complementarity, we can multiply the impact. We need to make good use of BRICS, G77, and other similar mechanisms, broaden South-South cooperation on a larger scale, and jointly address global challenges. We also need to forge chains of interconnected development and seek strength through unity. The purpose of inviting some representative developing countries from different regions to this dialogue is to foster a broad network of development partnerships and to build a community of common development and a shared future. Dear colleagues, China sets great store by the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We have developed a national program to implement the agenda and set up innovation demonstration zones on sustainable development. Thanks to these efforts, we have attained early harvests on economic, social, environmental, and many other fronts. Internationally, China will work through such mechanisms as the Assistance Fund for South-South Cooperation, China UN Peace and Development Fund, and South-South Climate Cooperation Fund to boost cooperation on development and help fellow developing countries in implementing the Sustainable Development Agenda. Here I wish to announce that China will provide $500 million to the Assistance Fund for South-South Cooperation. The money will be used to help fellow developing countries tackle famine, refugee, climate change, public health, and other challenges. China will enhance development experience sharing and capacity building cooperation with other countries through such platforms as the Center for International Knowledge on Development and the Academy of South-South Cooperation and Development. We will provide other developing countries with 40,000 training opportunities in China in the coming year. 4 years ago, I put forward the idea of building a Silk Road economic belt and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road. The initiative received warm response from the international community. In May this year, China hosted a successful Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. Together with the participating countries and international organizations, we outlined a vision of future cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative and proposed concrete measures to support countries along the Belt and Road in pursuing sustainable development. It was widely agreed that the philosophy and vision of the Belt and Road Initiative and its focus on policy, infrastructure, trade, financial, and people-to-people connectivity have much in common with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and the two can very well complement and reinforce each other. The Belt and Road is as much a path of cooperation as one of hope and mutual benefit. As a follow-up to the outcomes of the Belt and Road Forum, China will develop cooperation with interested countries in infrastructure connectivity, production capacity, technological innovation, and other fields. A Chinese writer over 200 years ago once observed, "Is there anything too hard in the world? With determined efforts, a hard task becomes easy. Otherwise, an easy job may become difficult." Emerging market and developing countries represent the future of world development. It is our duty to promote international cooperation on development and implement the Sustainable Development Agenda. Let us work together to blaze a new path to development that is fair, open, comprehensive, and innovative. Well, this is the statement I made on the Chinese side. I now open up the floor for discussions.